As someone who has worked overnights for nearly a decade, consecutively now, and someone who has worked overnights pretty often on through his entire adult life, I can tell you that yes, there is something terrifying about the prospect of sleep. I don't do it anymore, and I suggest that you do not either. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for part 3 of a multi-part series as we read through The Willows by Algernon Blackwood. We will go part by part, and then we will have a review at the end of it. This video will be in the Willows playlist here on the channel, but it will also be in the Classic Haunts playlist, a playlist of videos in October of 2025 of horror literature as we lead up to Halloween, October 25. Now, this video will have 3 sections: a So What Happened recap of this portion of the short story, a literary criticism section, and a writer's corner where we talk about the stuff that we can take from this as a writer ourselves. So, what happened? Our narrator gets a little bit more of some semblance of sleep. He is suddenly aware of something approaching. He comes to the realization that it is not something approaching. There is a tree falling on the tent as he is laying there. So he rises and he calls to the Swede on his way out of the tent itself, but he finds the tree had not fallen and the Swede had not awoken. Yelled to the guy, but he did not respond. Is everything going okay there? He spends some more time out in the night, suddenly aware of the fact that apparently he cannot sleep and he is getting terrible sleep, so he might as well just walk around a little bit until he figures out how to calm his mind, I suppose. Even making sure during this time that he passes under those same trees that he had previously seen and was pretty sure that they were monsters growing from the soil beneath them. But instead of passing under those trees, easing his mind, it turns out that it just convinces him even more that there are monsters about. He feels someone brush past him, and he is positive that he has been assailed in the night by a monster. He then measures the distance between the willows that he thinks are creeping up on him and their tent, just to be sure that they are not moving, and then he goes back to sleep. So, what is it that we can take from this short story and talk about from a literary criticism section? Well, we do have this paragraph, which I think is pretty interesting. As though further to convince me that I had not been dreaming, I remember that it was a long time before I fell again into a troubled and restless sleep, and even then only the upper crust of me slept, and underneath there was something that never quite lost consciousness, but lay alert and on the watch. Now, I talked at the very beginning of this video about the horror of sleep, and guys, if you really think about it, and this is something that I'm going to touch on throughout this series, but sleep is terrifying. So I remember when I was just out of high school, the summer after I graduated high school, I was working overnights, and I was still living with my parents, and I was sleeping, obviously, during the day, but it never goes very well. And the reason I'm telling you this is because of the implications of the story itself, right? So, I remember one day my mother had come home and told me that she got me some McDonald's. Great, right? I told her, put it in the refrigerator, I'll be up later, you know? And I got up later, before I went to work, and it was gone. And I was furious because I was pretty sure my father had eaten it. I mean, I was furious that I did not have this meal. And my mother came in and said, what is going on? What are you mad about? And I said, he ate my McDonald's. And she said, no, you ate your McDonald's. You told me to put it in the refrigerator, and then you basically followed me up the steps and ate the McDonald's. I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea. The reason I'm saying this is not to blame my father for eating my McDonald's 20 years after the fact, is because I had no idea that had happened. I was, by all intents and purposes, still asleep for this. And during that sleep, I had gotten up, I had walked up the stairs, I had eaten a meal, and I had gone back to bed and completely forgotten about it. I mean, in a matter of what would have been 4 hours, probably a 4-hour span, this happened. And it's very much like when I was in high school, I had a concussion. I played football, and head-to-head collision, back of my head, guy just speared me. I got up, I went back to the huddle, listened to the play, broke the huddle, and then I collapsed. I have no idea what happened from the time I was on the football field until the time I was waiting for someone to come pick me up. No idea. And it must have been at least 30 minutes, right? There's little bits and flashes of things that I remember. The first thing I remember is walking in the school, which means that I had been on autopilot for about a quarter of a mile uphill because the football fields were downhill a little ways away from the school. So my body was going. My mind was going. But who it was that was on the outside, I have no idea. Because what I consider myself to be was completely absent. So this is, I think, a subtly terrifying thing into which we do not often tap. And that is why this is something that is, I think, so powerful in this short story. Because it is a constant reminder. So pretend you sleep 8 hours. A lot of people don't sleep a full 8 hours, but pretend you do. 33% of your life, 8 hours every 24 hours, 33% of your life, you are not conscious. You have no real control over who or what it is that you are thinking, saying, doing, what it is who it is you are being during that time, right? And I think that is something that is subtly horrific, and I think that when you're looking at stories that build on dread, H.P. Lovecraft builds on dread. The Willows is one of the preeminent short stories when people start talking about dread. Maybe not horror, maybe not slasher stuff, but this idea of dread. Sleep is often involved in these stories. And you can I've got 40 books of short stories. I could read 20 of them and not have a short story mention sleep, right? Sleep does not come up in every short story. When you're reading a short story that is described with the word dread, it comes up. Then we have this paragraph. It was a great staggering blow from the wind that helped me forward again, and once out in the more open space, the sense of terror diminished strangely. The winds were about and walking. I remember saying to myself, for the winds often move like great presences under the trees, and altogether the fear that hovered about me was such an unknown and immense kind of fear so unlike anything I had ever felt before, that it woke a sense of awe and wonder in me that did not much to the that did much to counteract its worst effects. And when I reached a high point in the middle of the island, from which I could see the wide stretch of river crimson in the sunrise, the whole magical beauty of it all was so overpowering that a sort of wild yearning woke in me and almost brought a cry up into the throat. So here we have someone who is kind of moving on instinct, someone who is returning to something primal, something instinctual is rising up, something uncontrollably him is rising up. And we have to sort of parse this with this idea of the terror of sleep. Here he seems to be moving on autopilot, but he seems to be awakened. He seems alive, that it woke a sense of awe in me. And we have to, I think, question, what is it in us that is the controlling source? What is it inside of us that really sets the mechanisms and levers into motion? He can't sleep. Sleeping is completely letting go. Sleeping is complete relaxation. He can't sleep. And when he is awake, he must be tired, right? He's been going through it down this river, and he is without creature comforts, so he's tired, but he feels alive in the middle of the night. It feels as if he has found something primal here. Does this or does this not suggest that he's returning to something natural, something paganistic? He is going back to something that is more earthly. And in doing so, he's taken the governor off of his mind. He has taken the governor of civilization off of his mind. Is this suggesting that the you and I know to be us has been crafted by society, and if we remove that thing and we just run barefooted through the fields, we will return to something that is more fitting of our actual nature? So we've seen him sort of pop up a couple times with these seemingly neo-paganistic sentiments about how good it feels out in the nature, about how free he feels out in the nature, about how something has awakened in him out in the nature. And we are left to kind of figure that that is something good. This animalistic feeling that he has where he feels more powerful, that seems to be described here by our speaker as something good. So that means the opposite's bad, right? The opposite is the societal expectations that we carry with us. The opposite is this idea that there is something we should be and something that we should not be. So maybe the dread in this story is our speaker asking, what am I becoming out here? Almost like a werewolf story, right? What am I becoming out here? Who is it that I have come out into the woods to become? And the final point here, the writer's corner that I have for this video, is just this. I am in awe of the discipline that it takes to write dread, because there's no payoff. And I think that's part of the reason why so few writers do it well. Like, you look at Stephen King. Stephen King sold more books than God, right? He's a horror writer. He doesn't write dread. So many of these writers, when I started thinking about it, I don't think write dread. I think they write horror. I think there is a fine line between the two. And I think that the main thing there, there's no payoff for dread. I mean, we are most of the way through this story now. And if we're looking at it objectively, nothing has happened. Nothing has happened. Having read some H.P. Lovecraft, a lot of the times nothing really happens. So the idea, the specter of writing dread, is one that I think takes a whole lot of discipline. And I wonder if that is part of the reason that, and look, maybe there's a lot of them out there that with which I am just not familiar, but it seems like it does not happen an awful lot. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about on the channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. There is poetry every Monday, and as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.